And welcome to Georgia Institute of EMS Underground. I am your host today, Charles McFall, and I did again forget my uniform shirt, which is just upstairs in my closet. But now it is show time. It is time to get this done. So that is what I aim to do. Let me get my sound on my phone turned off. Here's how this works. Normally Tom is with me, but Tom had some family stuff to deal with, and they're a little behind on getting some construction stuff done at the show, at the site, at the shop, at the store, at the school, whatever you want to call it. It's probably best to call it the school, but I don't do things that are best. But yeah, so Tom's not able to join me today, so I'm doing it again from my studio. And last week I did this from my studio, and I need to. Actually, I want to shift this over just a touch so I can see. So last week the audio went a little crazy on me, but I'm going to monitor it a little bit better now this week so that it doesn't go all nutso and scream at you like it did last week. Last week was a little rough. I am here to interact with you. I'm here to get your questions, to give you some advice, some answers. I've been a paramedic for 2000, so 17 years. Is when I got my paramedic, was in the year 2001, so 16 years. Just after I got married, so I should be able to remember that. And I have been out of the field a little bit now uh, for, I don't know, a number of years. And Tom, of course, has been teaching. I've stayed adjacent to the field, right? I went to do heart rhythms and cardiac monitors at a company called PDS Heart that ended up getting bought out, so on and so forth. And I've been doing media for 12 years now as well. So there you go. We want your comments. We want your questions, your posts. I'm gonna ask me anything is what I'm gonna type in here. So I'd like to get that going. There we go. All right. Well, here's the thing. So let's talk about different ways to de-stress. Let's talk about critical incidents. Let's talk about, whatever you want to talk about, really. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. But I was talking to a friend of mine today, actually, about continuing education and podcasting. And so I'm going to share this out because that's how Facebook goes, right? You need to share things. You need to put that thumbs up. You need to like. EMS Underground is live. See, I can't do this beforehand. It has to go live to Facebook first because you might be watching going, oh my God, why are you spending showtime doing this? Because that's the time to do it, unfortunately. That's how we have to go. So definitely share that out. Put your hearts up, put your likes up, those kind of things. So I was talking with a friend of mine today about continuing education on the delivery side of it, right? And we've all been there, right? As captains, as lieutenants, as shift leaders. Of course, as employees, we're there going, hey, I need so many hours to keep my license up. Or, hey, there's this new thing coming out. How do I use it? And we've all been there with the CPR. Let me start with CPR. The most basic of basic things I think that we do on the truck is CPR. I think it's more basic than driving. You could say, oh, ambulance drivers. No, I mean you gotta pay attention to traffic. You gotta understand people are staring at you, so they're not paying attention. So you not only have to worry about how you drive, you have to worry about how others react to you as well. I think it's a little more difficult to drive than to do CPR. I think anything. I think just about anything is easier than or harder than doing CPR. So the most basic of things is CPR, right? In even the slowest of services, Hey, Jeremy Payne. All right, cool. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to hit that here in a second after I finish the CPR thing. Even in the slowest of services, you do CPR with a team quite often. I mean, I think in the slowest of services, you could probably get down to once a month. I was in a rural one. We did it 2, 3 times a month, easy. Did CPR. You in the busy services, you're doing it once a day, if not more. So that's one thing that we're very, very familiar with as EMTs and as medics, as firefighters, even. That's the thing that we do all the time. But you have to do the continuing education on it, right? You have to recert when I worked for National, we did it every year. They gave us a recertification in CPR. But I think it's every 2 years, supposedly, you have to get it done. I don't know why I did air bunnies and said supposedly because that's just me. I don't know. I don't know when you have to do it. So here's the thing. How many times have you sat in a room with everybody else on your shift and just pencil whip the test, right? All right, how many? All right, yes, 30 to 2 is, how many? Okay. because we know that's not a real thing. I mean, we do it all the time. When you're active in the field, there's no class that's going to beat the skills that you have. There's no test that's going to say, you didn't pass the test, so you can't be a paramedic. Nobody's going to do that. So we know that there are times when the training isn't real, right? And I do quoty fingers, isn't real because it's a known thing and you just pencil whip it. You just go through it. And that's something that we're working on here at Georgia Institute of EMS is how to deliver continuing education through this kind of format, the live Facebook format. And that's what I was talking to my friend about. He's in a different field, military related. And he started talking about how he pitched a podcast and said, I said, oh, dude, continuing education, at least in Georgia and EMS, from what I understand, for this to be an official continuing education video, is we need to do some say this is what we're going to talk about. This is our topic today. Stress in EMS. It can be anything because we're like a magazine. It can be a topic, but to have it really count, not just so. Right now, I mean, watching these videos, we count as that other form of continuing education because we're a media delivery service. So the discussions we have on guns and EMS, the discussions we have on nursing and EMS, those kind of things. All this counts towards continuing education already under the whole magazine, media, video section. What we're trying to do is possibly bump it up a step, right? So we just have to tell you this is our topic. Here's a few bullet points and then link it to a test of some kind. Just a quiz that says, we talked about using a monkey wrench on a stretcher today. I mean, I don't know why we talk about that, but that's what popped in my head. And so we'd say the topic's a monkey wrench, how to use a monkey wrench to fix your stretcher. And then we talk about that. And then, we bullet point it as we did it. And then you take the little 4-question quiz at the end and boom, you've got an hour of continuing education. And we could do that for cardiac, for medical, for specific areas, I believe. And that's something that this medium absolutely does involve and can do for you. And that's where we want to go. And part of that is you sharing this, you putting it out there, and you sending me your questions. Right now, today, this is still only going to be under the magazine media part, but your questions are what drives this forward. So now to your questions. Jeremy Payne, who is a regular attendee of these live events here. My wife did the practice test and just taking it slow. Just taking it slow. Also, some of the other tips you mentioned to me to tell her, and she, he just put it on, and she passed. Hey, yeah. She's been an EMT-B for about a month now. Congratulations, Mrs. Payne. That is awesome. All right, so Jeremy, when we first started, one of the first times I went solo, I was doing the whole pitch like I do. Ask me anything, throw out your questions. And he had stuff about nerves and testing. And I think we actually brought it up again with Tom Camplain on as well. And so good. I'm glad some of the tips worked and some of the stuff we mentioned helped you as she passed. That is awesome. And then he says that would be great. It would make it easy for people to do that don't have the extra time to put in like family chores. Yeah, no kidding. One of the reasons I initially dropped my numbers is I left the active paramedic field where my certification was maintained by my employer, right? At no point did any employer I worked for require me to go out and find my own hours of education. They gave me classes. They gave me recertifications. They kept track saying, hey, come sign the paperwork. We're going to send this into the state. We'll pay the fees for you. Hey, here's an ACLS class for you. Hey, here's CPR. You get it. So doing those in-house was very important to me and very necessary for me to be motivated to do my job. And when I left the active EMS field and went into the specialty of cardiology and worked, I say specialty like it's super important, right? Like, ooh, look at me, I went up. No, it was reading heart rhythms in a little 4-inch by 4-inch square on the screen and having a dozen of them and going, oh, there's second-degree block. Oh, that's first-degree block. Oh, there's a PVC. And the computer analyzed PVCs for you. They analyzed PJCs. Yes, they did that, but PSVT, all that jazz. So it was skilled and it was needed for what I did. My education was needed, but I hate when people make things sound more important than they are, and I do it all the time inadvertently. I had no intention to. So when I left, they required me to have a paramedic at that moment. Well, things change. See, here's the thing. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. with BK and Strickland being in on the show, that it all comes down to money. And so I was hired at this company. It was called PDS Heart at the time. And I was hired because Medicare, Medicaid at the time, let's see, my daughter was born 2006. So it would have been 2006 when I joined up there. Because right after my daughter was born, I took a couple weeks off and then went back to work, turned in my notice, and went there. So Medicare, Medicaid changed in 2006, going into 2007, changed how they were going to pay. They do this all the time, and other insurance companies follow the government's precedents. And Medicare, Medicaid said for Holter monitoring, you had to have letters behind your name. You had to be a RN, an LPN, or a paramedic. And I was one of the few people who put in as a paramedic and basically got hired on the spot. What is a GMS day course? Does Georgia GEMS? All right, Brent, I would have to look that up. If you're talking about Georgia EMS, we have a day course, but I'm not sure what the GEMS day course is. So I'll look that up here in a second because that's a great question. I will definitely look that up and see what we have to match that. And let me put a tab on my other screen so I can keep the comments open here. But I went there because I needed a change, and they needed my paramedic numbers behind them to get paid. And that went on for a while. And then after about a year, and of course they said, okay, because we need you, we will pay for your recertification, this and that and the other. Well, and it took about a year, but the moment that Medicare, Medicaid said that, I'm assuming you mean geriatric there, Brent, said that no longer is that required to be paid. They said, hey, you still have a job. We love what you're doing. No worries, but we're not going to pay for your certification anymore. And so then it was on me to get all the extra hours, come up with the money to pay for ACLS that I had to have, PALS, CPR. Well, okay, let's be honest. If you're in the field at all, you know somebody who teaches CPR, and they'll put you down on a roster. And if we're being honest here, that happens rampantly throughout EMS. And it's what I started this episode with, talking about pencil whipping tests and how that's not really education, right? That's not really moving you forward. And that's something we want to change. We want you to be, since you have to do continuing education to keep your license and work, we want you to be entertained. Want you to have the desire to get in here and learn. So we want to do videos that are engaging, that entertain you at the same time, and make them easy. And then you just do the little tests and you get those hours. So you get a major benefit. You have fun doing it. Because I got to tell you, I've paid a couple of great sites. This is before Tom did his school, didn't know about his school. But I paid for some really good sites that are out there for Georgia paramedic medicine. And they probably cover other areas too, but that's the only thing I cared about was Georgia paramedic medicine. And it's just dull because you have to read the page. And I mean, you're talking, man, when I left the field 2007, late 2006, really, is when I left the field actively. And so it would probably been mid to late 2007 or even 2008 when I had to do it on my own. Because at that point, I'd already recertified right after I joined PDS Heart, so then it was another 2 years. So let's just say 2008, 2009 is when I had to recertify. And they weren't doing a lot of videos. YouTube was still a baby kind of thing. Businesses were not jumping on board with YouTube like it is now. Obviously, there was no Facebook Live. And honestly, people who get in to teach don't have my personality, which is I just want to entertain you. I want you to have fun while you're learning. And so there weren't very many videos, and the ones that were there were just, you do CPR by doing compressions, find the xiphoid process. It's like, oh my God, you're making me want to pull my hair out. Or you have to read, and there's a timer, and then you do the test. It was functional, but not enticing, right? So I understand going through all that. But if we can do it here where it's live and you can interact, and you can also obviously go back and watch the recording of it, and the link will always be there about, hey, go to this link, take the test. And we haven't worked out all the details, but that's where we're going. So the GEMS, geriatric EMS is what you said. GEMS day course. Oh, it helps if I spell that right because I put GES instead of GEMS. Geriatric Education for Emergency Medical Services. Due to what is offers a basic core course, an advanced course. Uh, this one, I don't think we've gotten here yet. This is from naemt.com, and it says GEMS, GEM at geriatric EMS. Uh, GMS or GEMS provides EMS practitioners at all levels the skill and knowledge to handle a unique medical social environment. Blah blah blah. Offers a course. Well, it's not saying where the course is. Oh, you know what? I saw the button. Locate a course. Let's do that. Because I'd like to know more about this course. I mean, I understand the basic behind it. Geriatric EMS. So for Georgia, because we don't care about anything else. Well, I mean, we do. If you're outside of Georgia, we love your interaction with this. But I assume most everybody interacting with me is in Georgia, and that's where my level of expertise is. So, by all means, I'm happy to help you find information in your area. And we do want to scale the continuing education. Hopefully, will fit all the United States requirements, and that so you could tune in here and watch that and do that. That's something I'm very passionate about. And Tom is it's on our to-do list, right? We've got a lot of things in growth that we're doing right now with the school. So the idea would be the continuing education would be nationally registered and it can go all over. But specific courses like this, I'm going to kind of focus on Georgia. And thank you, Barbara. I see you putting stuff in. I'm going to ask you or read that here in a second. There are no courses matching your search criteria. So there's no GEMS course in Georgia right now, according to this website. That's obviously something that is needed. We'll put it on Tom's radar. Maybe we can do a geriatric course for it. I honestly, I know it's about geriatric patients and the specifics and situations that they're in. But when I see geriatric EMS, I think of a lot of the old school partners I had. And like, is this a class on young kids? I was a young kid, young, new to the field people and how to deal with the 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old burnout who doesn't want to be on the truck no more and who ignores all the rules. Is this that class? Because we need that class. Barbara says, why am I not seeing all the comments? How do I do this? Click for more. I need to see all the comments because I had the comment. I want to address the question. Brent, so right now, it doesn't. I don't believe there is a specific geriatric course offered through Georgia Institute of EMS. Barbara might know a little bit more, so keep watching her typing here. She might need a little more. She might know a little more there about that. But that would definitely be something to offer. That's great. Jeremy says, what would you recommend doing before one goes to paramedic school as far as working in the field? Oh, okay, dude. I won't go off too long on this because I've definitely spent a lot of time on this in the past. And please, in the comments, if the sound gets wonky, when you see me look all the way over, I'm looking at the reaction of the audio. But I'm only listening to my soundboard and not through the actual computer. So if it goes wonky like it did last week, please type something immediately in the chat room so I can try to fix it because it built up last week and then it started screaming. I would never want to do that to somebody. So yeah. But as far as your skill and experience, I recommend going. I think the state of Georgia has changed. See, okay, when I went through EMT school in 1996, there was intermediate EMT. I was one of the first classes of intermediate EMT, and that was it. They were already phasing out cardiac tech. I could not sign up for that afterwards. It was EMTI and paramedic, and you had to have the one before you got the other, unless you went to a zero to hero school. Well, I said it wrong. It's really a hero to zero. You want to be a hero, you come out thinking you know everything, you know nothing. Because honestly, when you come out of school, you know nothing. You got enough to say, yes, you're safe in the field. Yes, legally, you're allowed to practice. Yes, you passed a bunch of tests that proved you learned something, but you don't know anything. I mean, honestly, I think the best attitude even for me now today is I don't know much. I have skills I can go in and I can learn, and I have an ability to yes, I do have knowledge, and I have almost 10 years of paramedic practice under my belt to back me up. But I've been out of the field for a while. So while I've done some recertifications, I can stick an IV, I can stick a tube. I'm going to tell you, if for some reason I had to get on a truck after I got my numbers back, I'm going to be, you know what? Please put me with a seasoned EMT or a seasoned paramedic. Let me get unrusty, right? Get back into the practice. And even then, I think people liked me because I never went, I'm a paragod. I always was like, hey, what do you know? What do you see? Do you have a better idea? Let's work together on this. So I think that comes from learning from being in the field and shutting up and listening. So before you go to paramedic school, I saw some people who just went straight out of EMT school to paramedic school and never went to the whole enchilada program, right? Where you come in knowing nothing, and by the time you're done, you've done EMT. At this point, it'd be EMT-B, EMT-A, or advanced EMT rather, sorry, because EMT-A is an old EMT certification. EMT basic, advanced EMT, and EMT paramedic. And then when you're done, you've gotten all those under your belt, but you've not worked a day in the field. I think working in the field, seeing the realities of it, seeing how things play out differently than what the book tells you, and how things play out differently in an unperfect world, that is one of the most important things you can do going into paramedic school. If I started in 2000, it was a very short class. I took my test before the end of the year in 2000, failed it, took it again, and early in 2001, got my numbers. So in the year 2000, it was a middle class. So I'd been working in the field since 97, let's say, 1997, off and on. And at that point, when I went to paramedic school, if that was 99, so 2 years, I'd probably been 2 years at National EMS before I went to paramedic school. And I gotta tell you, it makes the difference. It makes all the difference in going when you go to paramedic school because you get concepts a lot easier. Now, okay, acid-base balance is never an easy concept to get, ever. Cellular level biology is never an easy concept to get no matter what. And that's where your experience will fight you because I was going, we don't deal with this. Not really. And that made it difficult for me to learn. But other than that, the hands-on skills, understanding how the drugs interacted, understanding heart rhythms and cardiac when you've been in the field and seen your partner prognose, because diagnose is a dirty word in EMS, right? We don't diagnose. We're not doctors. Prognosis, basically you figure it out. And you've seen your partner do that a number of times, and they've taught you, and especially if you have a good partner, they've kind of taught you what they're looking at, what they're looking for. That helps. That helps greatly. All right, Barbara says, I found being creative and teaching makes students learn more. Yes. If you're not laughing, you're not learning. I'm telling you, I just went to see Jim Brewer live in Athens, Georgia. And he was actually last night, I think he was in Atlanta as well. He's a comedian. He was on Saturday Night Live. He's famous for doing the movie Half Baked. He's doing the Family Warrior Tour and has been doing that for years now. Great stand-up comedian, funny guy. And I found myself, and his style of comedy is to tell stories from his life and just ramp him up and be funny. And check him out on YouTube. Amazing guy, funny stuff. And he's just all over the place where I like to be. You know, he likes metal music. He's had all kind of day jobs. He's had all kind of experiences, and he can share that. My point is, I laugh so much at his real stories. I was waiting for that motivational moment to come, that educational moment to come, because that's how I love to learn. And it didn't come because, well, he's a comedian. I mean, he was just entertaining us for 2 hours. Well, not just. I mean, he did an amazing job, and I needed that laugh. And there was somebody in the audience, just side note, there was somebody in the audience who did one of those huge, deep belly laughs. And he couldn't stop laughing. That it was just his, and Jim called it out. He's like, oh, man, that's just stress, man. Come on, get it out. That's bills not being paid laughter. That's your mama's dying laughter. Come on, get that stress out, man. It needed it. And we all have been there, right? We've all had those moments on the truck, in the back of the truck, at the EMS station, in the ER EMS room, where something just hits you just right, and you can't stop laughing because you just needed that tension breaker, that moment. So teaching through laughter is, to me, the best way to do it. It's the only way to learn. Terry agrees with Barbara. She came back. The advent of technology in IT and education adds to it. I actually use acting and comedy in classes, squeezing it in and learning. Yes. Yes. Laura, Laura's pointing out my Cookie Monster there. I love that. He mentioned it in a lecture. Well, honestly, Brent, I'm not. I'm glad you mentioned it. I am, and it's something that Barbara's here. His wife, Barbara Campbell, is here. So both of us will take it back to Tom and say, do we have? You know what? Let me. I keep rubbing my nose. I'm sorry. I got this itch, and it's a very bad habit on camera to itch your nose because it makes other people's nose itch. Um, and I do apologize for that. Plus, there are people who are so hygienically challenged that just seeing somebody touch something they would never want to touch just freaks them out. I am looking up the classes right now on the site, Brent, to see. Okay, EMT AMT combo course, advanced course, EMTI to bridge, refreshers, continuing education, national. So I don't see anything officially listed. I don't deal with setting up the classes. I help announce when they're coming out. I help. I'm going to be help teaching very very soon in these classes. But right now, Tom and some other people set up the actual classes that are coming out, and I don't see it. But again, I think it's an amazing idea, Brent, and I think that it's on point as something that is necessary. So we'll bring it up to Tom. Terry Dearman says, Charles, I think the problem I see is the young EMTs are not learning compassion and how hard it is to refresh the skill in EMT and paramedic school. Dude, that's man, that is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I've told this story before. I'm going to tell it again very, very quickly. It's widespread just in EMS in general. Tom even brought it up. We're one of the few fields in the world that we go to work and hope to never do a thing, right? We hope to never work. That's because it's a mental thing, right? It's we're there for 24 hours, so you're living there. It's a whole different experience than you ever had working at McDonald's or in an office or anywhere else. And you're going to be there, and there could be long stretches of time that there's no calls, right? And when we do work, when we truly go to the other end of the scale and we work, it's a bad day for somebody. It's a car wreck. It's a death. It's CPR. It's amputations. It's rape, man. And I've dealt with some rape victims. In my heart, I mentioned that specifically because we're going to talk about young EMTs and compassion. But I got to tell you, it was me and another guy on the ambulance. I had no female partner at the time because that's what you would want. You'd want female on female contact there. And just seeing the brokenness in this woman and her husband trying to comfort her. And I'm 6'7" and at my heaviest, and I was probably at my heaviest at this moment, 370 pounds. I'm huge, and she's an average 5'5", 120-pound woman who just got raped. And I mean, I'm making sure to keep more than arm's distance away. I'm talking very gently. I'm always trying to get down below her level if I'm talking to her. I sat on the far end of the bench away from her so she could see me, but I'm as far away from her as I could get. And that is something that is never taught in class. Now, yes, it's just when you talk about the one night that you maybe spend half an hour to an hour on rape victims and domestic violence, that's how it was in the 90s. I mean, maybe now it's a whole 4-hour class. I don't know. But when I took the class, it was a glaze over. We don't really want to deal with it. Here's some of the things to be sensitive about. And of course, some jackass in the class always is going to make a joke about it, right? Because that's part of what we do in EMS. We have that dark sense of humor. And that's something we have to teach is there's a time and a place for humor. And while you definitely need that dark humor and you need to be able to laugh and get stress off or talk things out, because there's a fine line between making jokes and laughing about it and relieving stress. And I really need to talk to somebody. There's a very fine line. And Terry, you are spot on. I mean, whenever I do teach, that's going to be one of my hard points is be excellent to each other. Quote, quote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, be excellent to each other. Because what I was talking about when we go into EMS and we don't want to work and this and that, the widespread bad negative attitude that I inherited, I learned on the job was when you had to do a non-emergency transport or when you had the foot pain at 3 in the morning. Now, it's still very, very difficult for me at 3 in the morning to be happy about going to a foot pain patient. But what I found is I got a little more blunt. I got a little less tactful, but I was never mean. My famous story is pulled up to an apartment building. The guy's on the sidewalk with a glass of wine, a little glass of wine, and a suitcase, and he's having abdominal pain and wants to go to the hospital. And my partner, who was a young EMT, started a fight. I went, shut it. I mean, I literally put my hand in his face, in my partner's face, and said, shut it. And told him to get in a truck. I told the guy, come on. I said, you can't bring your wine. Just put your glass down. I'm not going to fight him. I'm not going to lecture him. All it does is make negative on me. He didn't care. He wanted to go to, I don't know why he wanted to go to the hospital. He wanted to go to the hospital. It was literally 3 minutes away from the apartment buildings. But he needed it. Fine. I have realized this is something I will teach in class. Pick your battles. Pick your battles, man. And honestly, it's not your job to fight. So the compassion there was, all right, man, come on, get in the truck. And I'm talking to him like he's a human being. That's as far as at 3 a.m. with a stupid call. That's as far as I can get compassionate-wise. But so many people don't get it. Another time, and I'm going to get back to emergency transport, but another time we get a shift change with 6:30. We got that 6 a.m. call, and it was one of our regulars. And he was in a long-term care home. He wasn't a nursing home per se, but it's assisted living, I think. And we go in. I can't remember the complaint or whatever, but my partner is just aggressive and he's angry that you woke him up and his shift is changing and blah, blah, blah. And he goes in and the guy makes a joke at his expense that honestly me and the firefighters laughed about. It was funny, whatever. Because my partner's being a smartass, and he says something like, "Does a bear poop in the woods?" or something, something trying to be mean to the guy. And the guy was just wittier. He just came back with a one-liner that burned him. And my partner got mad. So again, same partner that fought with the abdominal guy. I said, go to the truck. That was funny. You need to learn a sense of humor. So that's something I want to teach people, is a sense of humor. But if we would focus on the thing that I learned in non-emergency transport, right? Now, it was a hybrid truck. So we did 911 calls and non-emergency calls. And the bad attitude that I learned at first was, oh, go pick up this lady to go from the nursing home every third day over to dialysis. And then you have to bring her back. Oh, blah, blah, blah. That ruins my nap. That ruins my Xbox time. I could be saving lives. And we got to teach this next generation, all the new generations of EMTs and medics that come through. Everybody needs help sometimes. And during this time, this is the famous story I was talking about. During this time of doing these transports, my grandmother, who lived in another state, my grandfather and grandmother lived in another state, she had Alzheimer's and diabetes. And her Alzheimer's was getting worse and worse and worse. And one morning, she was low blood sugar and confused, and she fell and broke her hip in the bathroom. They had to call the medics, and she just didn't know what was going on. She's screaming, and she's fighting and doing what disoriented patients do. And my grandfather, I had the worst attitude about non-emergency transports and anybody that wasn't a car wreck or CPR at the time. And when my grandfather told me directly how professional the EMTs were, how she even tried to bite them, and they never raised their voice. They were kind to her. They protected themselves. They had to restrain her a little bit but he got it. She just was fighting. She didn't know what was going on. But he just glowed about how they took care of his wife. And it brought tears to my eyes because that wasn't me. Me being in the same field, I think I was going to paramedic school at the time, me being in the exact same field, I was treating people like dirt if I didn't like what they did. I was uncompassionate. Thought I was the hottest snot in the world and just, oh, you don't meet my criteria? And it changed. That phrase popped in my mind. Everybody needs help sometimes. And that even means us. I've used that phrase in critical stress debriefing and those kind of things when I talk about it here on the show. But that's something that I will teach my students, is that you will fuel energy into people. And if you're negative, all you're going to do is make the problem worse. And this lady who was the patient we had to pick up from the nursing home, unresponsive, gray, and she had dementia. Everybody at some point puts dementia down on a chart, whether it's true or not. I was just sitting there miserable, writing my report. Taking her to dialysis. I know how to speak, and I'm not speaking well. Dialysis. Took her there, and brought her back, this and that and the other. Well, after this happened with my grandmother, I started seeing what I could do. Okay, let me start talking to her. Hi, Miss John. I don't know her name, Miss So and So. How are you doing today? I'm Charles. That's my partner Chuck. We're gonna be taking you to dialysis today. This and that. And then we would pick her up. We'd help her out. Well, I gotta tell you, just talking to her changed the world. The universe went, hey, guess what? She's not unresponsive. Hey, guess what? What you put into somebody you get out of. Because very quickly after a couple of weeks, that's 6 trips or so, and I was passing it on to other EMTs, and I'm like, sure, why not? We'll try it. And now, all of a sudden, she's talking to us. All of a sudden, she's got color in her face. I mean, she was great. She was great every time we picked her up. But now, all of a sudden, she's got color in her face, and she looks like a human being. And we noticed it was her birthday coming up. We got her little cake, made her day. One day, because she was supposed to come back about lunchtime, one day we got behind running calls and couldn't pick her up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they don't have food at the dialysis clinic. I mean, they might have crackers or something, but not food. We happened to have found out that she liked Wendy's. So on the way to get her, we stopped and got her some Wendy's. And I think statutes of limitations has passed where I can say 10 years ago, I let somebody eat a hamburger in the back of the ambulance because that changed her life. And that's what I think you're touching on, Terry, is that you got to have compassion. That's what makes you a professional. Knowledge from the book doesn't make you a professional. Knowledge that you think you have that is how you act, what you do with it, that makes you a professional. And compassion and all that is so important. And honestly, I don't know how to do this, but I think there needs to be, just like we have a test for CPR and a recertification for this, and paramedics have to go through the recert classes and just to make sure they know things, I think there needs to be some kind of test on compassion, on people skills, on communication, because how you say something matters. So I'm going to move on to lots of great comments here. But Terry, thank you. Thank you for adding that, throwing that in. Along the same lines, Laura DePooter says, what do you think people should be doing during EMT? Mental health, physical health, for themselves, I'm assuming you mean. Okay. In EMT school itself, we had some kind of DUI video. Is the one that supposedly the state, somebody had somewhere that was supposed to go around teach a class to high schoolers, this is why you don't drink and drive. And it was a full video of car wrecks and crashes and dismemberments and stuff and beer cans everywhere, right? All of it supposedly DUI. Well, it's heavy, right? It's heavy. And we're watching it kind of get desensitized. We're watching it. I can't remember the exact point they were making, but at one point there was this scene. And I mean, all these are real life videos. They're just cut together. So there's this particular scene and this construction site, a big 10, 20-foot concrete retaining wall had collapsed as a whole. Like I said, broken off from its supports, fallen flat. And I would guess, about 8 feet under the wall was a body. And we're watching as the firefighters use bags to lift it just enough. And they take the pike pole and go in and they're pulling the guy out. And I mean, you're getting this idea as a human being and it's a heavy thing. And as they pull him out, I can't even help but giggle now. As they pull him out, I was a huge fan of Gary Larson, The Far Side. Google it, The Far Side. Google Gary Larson, Far Side, elephant or elephant dreams. Or I'm sorry, not elephant dreams. Buzzard, like a vulture. Because he has this. Gary Larson did One Square comics, and it's a square, and it's a vulture on the side of the road in the desert, dreaming about a run over pancaked elephant, right? Because that's what they eat. They eat roadkill. And the way it's drawn is just this flattened out elephant, and that's what he's dreaming about. And they pull this guy out, and here comes the boot, unscathed, uncrushed, Wolverine, metal toe, high-end construction boot. And then the rest of him is flat, and it's pancaked. And I broke. Right there. I just started laughing and laughing and laughing. And other people started laughing because I'm laughing. And they're like, what are you laughing at? And I could barely struggle out that thing about the elephant. That's all I could see was the flattened elephant and the buzzard dreaming about. And then it's like, about time I got myself calmed down, somebody's like, well, that should be an advertisement for Wolverine boots because there's not a mark on them. We lost it again. And that's the thing about being an EMT and being a paramedic, even in class. You do have to learn to laugh because that's a relief of stress. We're not mocking the loss of a human life. We're never, well, okay, I'm saying in a perfect world what I'm doing. I'm never mocking the loss of a human life. I'm never what's the word? I'm not downplaying the fact that sadness happened and a tragedy happened. But if we choose to carry everybody's weight on our shoulders, we will never do our jobs. Physical health, so mental health is that. Talk to somebody. That's what this show is about too. If you need to talk, I got to tell you, there's some amazing Facebook groups out there for mental health, for critical stress debriefing, for critical incidents, and they're safe. I got into one, and it took a couple of weeks, and then they vetted me. They actually reached out directly and said, "Okay, before we let you in, well, who are you associated with, and why do you want to be here?" And so I got to talking to them, not just about answering their questions, but asking them about their process and why they do it. And it's a really beautiful thing to be able to go into a room of people who are there and understanding and who can help, and just to get a weight off your shoulders, just to talk about the one that got you, the call that made you miss a beat, that won't go away out of your mind. You need that. And unfortunately, typically in most employment situations, there's a critical stress debriefer. And let me tell you, I went to one of those. I needed somebody to say, it's going to be okay. We've all been there. You did everything you could. Because I had that moment. I was under the table freaking the F out. You know, I had a fight with my wife that broke everything. I mean, it was just all building up, but it was that call that was bothering me. And I just needed somebody to say, we've been there. It's okay to be where you are. It's going to be all right. It will get better. And to hear me out, to feel like I was understood, to help take that weight off of me and throw it away, because it's a weight I didn't need. And I reached out to a few people in my company, or I went to one and then he sent me to a critical stress debriefer. Well, those guys are really designed for critical massive incidents. I don't know what their training is on. This is just a call that got to me. Because my guy was just like, well, yeah, that's a bad one. Okay, here's some paperwork. Take it back to your wife. And now he did give me some good advice of make sure you talk to your wife. Never shut out your loved ones. Include them in this, because without them, you'll end up alone. So let them help you. Help them help you. And that was it. I remember leaving going, that's it? He didn't even tell me it was going to be better. He didn't tell me it was going to be okay. He didn't tell me you're absolutely right to feel the way you feel. You have every right to be where you are, but let's let go of the parts that you don't need, and we'll work through the rest. So having those groups out there, EMS, there's the address right there, EMSU at Georgia or GAIEMS.org. Email us with these stories. We will help you as best we can. If it grows into it, I'd love to have an ability at the school to have you come by and de-stress and talk about it. But that's the thing. You have to talk to people, and that dark humor, share it, and include your loved ones. If you try to shut your family, something I tried to talk about last week with my wife, and then the audio buggered it and it went sideways, is include your loved ones, include your wife, include your family. If you're single or if you're not in a relationship, include your friends, your closest people, whatever. You will find that, yeah, you might weed out some people. You might have some people who just want the gory stories, but find somebody you can talk to seriously. And there's just too much, and in my experience, there was just too much of the bro wall. And I mean that for girls as well. But what I mean by that is, oh, bro, we don't have feelings, bro. We just tell dirty jokes, and we talk about things other people don't talk about, and we laugh at the darkness. But there's more to life, and we need to be able to say, no, that's a real thing. So that's a mental health, a spiritual health thing. Physical health, use MyFitnessPal is an app that I use now. I didn't have it back in the EMS, but track your calories, because I'm going to tell you, those stupid days when I was so busy and depressed and stressed out that I thought it was okay to live on Snickers bars and Mountain Dew. That's a huge bad no-no. You know, snacks are fine, but I'm not kidding. There were days I'd buy a 2-liter Mountain Dew and a couple of Snickers bars, and we just keep rolling. And that was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, or I get hungry at 3 a.m. So we'd hit whatever was open, late, and get the chili cheese dog or something. It's if you can just find ways to eat well, that's fine. Smoking is a thing. It is. It's a thing. I have no judgments on it. Um, I, I'm telling in my situation, taking care of the stress first will lead to a healthier physical, healthier life. Because I tried to work out, I tried to do some things, and it wasn't taking because the stress and the darkness and the mental parts were taking over. So there's definitely things to keep out there, and yeah, to take care of you first. And we teach that in school so much on scene safety. You're first. You're first. Put on your safety first. You're first. But we don't act that way when we're in the field, right? We don't say, hey, you're first. Make sure you get something good to eat today. As employers, as captains, we don't do that. We don't say, hey, let's get somebody else to relieve you and take that call. Make sure you take 30 minutes to have a nice, quiet, safe meal. And that's something we can implement everywhere. Go to your job and ask them to do that. Go, screw it. Be the leader. Sub in for somebody. So you're doing calls. I don't know what your situation is, right? But if you can, if it's legally feasible, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Be the one to say, hey, wait, you guys, you ladies, you crew. I'm not sexist. I try to be gender fluid here with my speech, but guys is a term I use for everybody. I call my daughters guys, and they understand it's not because they have penises. It's because it's a generic term. So I just want to be clear. But you, my valued coworkers, y'all sit, take your half hour to eat. We're going to go run this call for you. And yeah, another call might drop. It all depends on your situation. But depending on where you are, you can be the leader in that. Say, hey, I want you to make sure you have your dinner because you need to be able to eat slow, healthy food. Right? We used to, firehouses are great about this because they have a bigger crew. They can do it. EMS is not so much, private EMS especially not so much. Be able to leave a man behind or a woman behind, whoever's volunteering to cook dinner, have dinner. You get to stay back and make sure the dinner's ready. Cook is a good, healthy meal that's not Snickers bars and Mountain Dew. So I think that's important as captains, as lieutenants, as leaders in this industry. We need to start doing that on our shifts and giving people opportunity. It's one thing's like, hey, the health insurance that everybody has here on the company says you can go to Gold's Gym for $10 a month. Yeah, and when the hell do I feel like going to Gold's Gym after a shift? I'd rather smoke a cigarette and eat a Snickers bar and maybe get some sleep and talk about crap that nobody wants to talk about because I'm dark and stressed. I mean, sure, some people use it, but I'm saying be proactive, be connected there. All right, I'm going off to this. Lars would come to a class. That's awesome. Uh, I'll be there till November going to AMT May. See, yeah, Brent. Hopefully I'll stop by some classes and we'll do that. Barbara says, when I have a lecture, I scan a class to see the generation ages. You go from there and break them into teams and mix them up. That's great, Barbara. Mix the experienced and the newbies, the young with the older. Team building workshops are great. There you go. I wake you. My voice wakes you up. Thank you. That's it. That's a great idea. That's something actually I hadn't thought about. Being in the classroom is we can teach, especially there. I went through PALS, and there was a guy who's taking it for the first time in myself in the class. So I've done PALS. I mean, it's been a while since I did it, but I've done it. I don't know, a dozen times. The class, the recertification. Dealt with pediatrics. It did pediatric Holter monitors. It was a little refresher. I took a page of notes. I definitely had I forgot about that. Some refresher. But I found like day one was refresher for me. Day two was let's take the test. Well, the first part of day two is scenarios. So we had this medic come in because Tom taught the first class. Then this medic came in to teach the second class. And the EMT was already there. He got there a little earlier than I did. And she was already there. He was there. And they were doing scenarios. So instead of me trying to run the scenario with him, I partnered with her and started helping him. Like, I'm your assistant. She's going to throw you the scenario. I'm going to assist you and help give you an idea, but let's see where you go with this. And that seemed to help him out a lot. And she even said something, you got 2 seasoned medics helping you out. Because that's what the goal of class is, right? Is to help out. So that, Barbara, is a great idea of putting the experience with the inexperienced and the young with the old. And that will help teach some compassion, too. And that's the thing in long term. There's this 5-week class coming up, this 5-week basic class. And that's a situation where you're immediately going to go, I don't get along with this person. I think, and this is just a spitball idea, wherever Tom goes with it, he goes with it. But I think Steve and Tom and James and whoever's going to be teaching this class, they need to find the people who don't get along and partner them up, because that's a skill that is very difficult to teach. Is how do you deal with a partner you don't get along with? Better yet, that's the first step. The second step is, okay, now you can tolerate anybody and you can ride with anybody. I'm doing quotey fingers here. How do you actually learn to find a way to connect with this person that you don't like? And that if you can learn to connect with partners that you don't like, with people you don't get along with, then it'll absolutely help you connect with patients and those kind of things. Um, you should run to lobby for EMS. I hate the government, Barbara. I hate the government. I do not want anything to do with the government. I will lobby from a podcast from far, but you know what? And honestly, if there was some kind of Georgia state hearing where my testimony would help, I would do that. But it's a one-day thing. I absolutely, and I need a steak. I need a steak and some scotch because I hate the government. I'm not an anarchist. It's the way government works and the bog that. Yeah, compassion. So I'm looking where people are following up. Thank you, Jeremy. Come back again. Thank you, Terry, for that. You need an EMS Buttercup group. Not suck it up, but keep going. You're worth it. Yeah. Laura's eating a nut mix and drinking Mountain Dew as I talk about all this. Great stuff, everybody. I'm glad that you threw in, that you put these things in. I see the time has flown by. It's about an hour right now. So I want to talk about some more of this stuff because it's important. Tolerance is the first step. Okay, tolerance is the first step. And by that I mean I tolerated the guy with the suitcase and the wine. Come on, get in the truck. And it literally was, I'm not going to do an assessment. I don't care. Okay, that's not true. I always cared. I cared about my own butt. I cared about, okay, well, if something legally, medically goes wrong. I cared about that. I didn't care about him. And we'll get to how to care about the patients in a second. Everybody needs help sometimes. But so I said, all right, get in the truck. And he gets in the truck. And I do most basic assessment. I make sure to push on his abdomen, get you check, ask the basic questions about abdominal discomfort. So I'm not going to miss something and get to the hospital and they rush him to surgery because it collapsed and now I lost my job. But did I do a blood pressure? Nope. I made that up. Did I put him on the heart monitor? Hell to no. We're 3 minutes from the hospital. Did I do an IV? Now, here's my standard stance on IVs. My company stance was everybody gets an IV. Partially to get them prepped for the hospital, right, for the nurses, one less thing a nurse has to do to take care of the patient. And then secondly, it was we can charge for it. Well, personally, my thought process is on certain calls like this, right? I was reading through an EMS humor group. Those are good too. There's some darkness. There's somebody posted in this EMS group, humor group that I'm in. Somebody posted, the fact that some of you people are certified and out there taking care of people worries me. And I'm like, no, that's I get that because there's some messed up stuff that goes on in the world, both on the caregiver side and the recipient side. But some of those things are funny. But this person posted a real call. It's like, we were dispatched to abdominal pain, en route to the hospital, and then they recount the conversation. And they say, lovely patient. And basically the patient's going, so, if this hospital's on diversion, you can take me to a different hospital. It's okay. If they're too busy, whatever. Well, they pull up to the hospital, and the patient's like, well, could you run in? Could you run in and see if they're busy? Because I really don't like to wait. If they're too busy, you can take me to another hospital. And their punchline was, and this is a real call. It's a real thing they're recounting. And their punchline was, and myself and the paramedic in the back didn't punch this person in the face or even act rude. We were nice to the patient the whole time. I think we deserve a gold star. And my thought was, I was like, no, you deserve some shots and some cookies. That's what you deserve. And I mean like alcohol shots, not, I don't know why. It's EMS, needles, whatever. But, you get the gold star for that. That was great because this person was obviously a manipulator. But here they've learned the highest step, the zen of it all, the balance, is you got to be happy with yourself. That's part of that Laura DePuter question of what do you recommend people do for mental health. If you're not okay with yourself, you're going to have a difficult time dealing with other people. I know. I can sit here for 3 hours and recount story after story after story of what I screwed up because I was not okay with myself. The anger, the words that came out of my mouth at people. I never hit anybody. I there's a whole long story about that too. But I had to control things, and I abused some EMTs. I mean, I'd get a new EMT in my truck and said, "You'll never be better than me. You'll never get to the truck before I will. All you can do is hope to be second place." And I'd run them ragged, and I'd put them through the paces. And by God, when I was done, they were good EMTs, but they would leave me, and they wouldn't talk to me anymore because I was an asshole. I was not okay with myself. And Laura asks, I'm going to put out, what kind of cookies do EMTs like best? I personally like white chocolate, was it macadamia nut? White chocolate macadamia nut cookies, like the Subway ones. Everybody likes chocolate chip, sugar. I mean, everybody does different things. And honestly, that is Laura, because Laura, so everybody knows, Laura is a friend of mine. She's followed me on other podcasts, and she runs a horse it's a training center, horse training center. So she's definitely been watching to ask questions about EMS and safety and how to handle emergencies and those kind of things. But she's a great lady, and she's very much putting into this show, and I really appreciate it. But Laura, I will tell you, and to any civilian listening, one of the greatest things you could ever do is randomly go by an EMS station or a firehouse and bring them home-baked food. Pies, cookies, lasagnas. I mean, anything. And it helps to call ahead too and say, "Hey, we thought we'd bring you dinner tonight, and just letting you know we're going to come by." Because I'm going to tell you, anybody that ever came by with cookies or food thanks is nice. Saying thanks is nice. I appreciate it. But when you would call us up, and you wouldn't know if we're having a bad day, but we're having a bad day, and the phone just rings like, and you pick it up, and EMS, and they're like, "Hey, this is Laura, and I just want to say thank you for what you do." And we're gonna bring you some cookies. Well, hey, what? Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. You're gonna bring us some cookies? Awesome. And maybe some dinner. Would you like a lasagna, or would you, how many cookies do you have? How many people are at your station? We make sure everybody gets some cookies. And you're like, yeah, man, flips the switch just like that. And that's a great thing to do. Uh, but Terry's like, no, don't feel bad. I don't necessarily feel bad because I gave them, going back to, for those of you who aren't following the chat as you're watching the video, because you can watch this later and the chat doesn't always line up. There's a setting. Let me educate you on how Facebook works. This is the end of the video, so it's a little late, but on the next video, you can click the comments. It'll show you top comments, most recent comments, all comments, or you can watch it in time frame, I think is the term. It's something that lets you know it's in time with the video. So if you do that one and you watch the video, the comments will come up live as they came up in the real broadcast. So Terry's responding to how I ran my EMTs ragged. I don't feel, I felt bad because I realized I hurt a relationship. We were friends. I'm thinking specifically of Suzanne Ward, and I think her last name's different now, but she was Suzanne Ward then. And I got her when she was a student, and she was a great student, and actually ran circles around my EMT as a student. And so when she got hired into our service, I asked for her as an EMT partner. We spent 2 years together, and towards the end of that 2 years, I got really dark and really heavy. And she requested a transfer off my truck, and it hurt my feelings. And what hurt me more was realizing why. It hurt my feelings because I damaged that relationship to the point that I didn't treat her like a human being. And that's what I feel bad about specifically. Everything else, I've kicked EMTs off my truck because they won't listen. I've had students give me glowing reviews. And just because you're hard on somebody doesn't make it wrong. I was hard on them, and it was important. It helped them. But the guy that you get here on the video that's talking about this compassion and talking about putting energy into people and what you put out is what you get back. I was not that guy then. I was the angry, dark person that de-stressed on the people around me. So, but talking about the steps, so I want to wrap this up. So tolerance is okay. I tolerated a guy getting in the back of the truck, didn't do a great job. Could have easily missed something. I could have easily missed a knife wound, a bullet wound to the chest where he tried to kill himself and patched it up because he didn't want anybody to know. I could have missed that. You hear stories about that all the time, where somebody didn't do a good thing and somebody tried to kill themselves and didn't kill themselves and regretted it, so they hid the mess and they called you for something else. That could have been me as a medic losing my job because I messed that up because I tolerated him. Now, tolerance was a good step because plenty of other medics would have yelled, would have fought, would have started problems, would have lectured, and still not done a good job. So that was a step, sure. The second thing I learned was everybody needs help sometimes, and giving compassion to people and helping out and doing the job I wanted to do for myself changed everything. And that's really where you learn to laugh at yourself. You learn to connect with people. I never mind. I was going to, there's a story that I can't get the words correct for to keep it from being controversial. And honestly, I don't have time. Maybe on the next show, yeah, we can talk about it. But it has to do with anything other than practicing medicine in the back of the truck. I mean, prayer. And that's why I said this is going to take a whole nother show to talk about. But I was going to set up what I was thinking about. Healthy life choices, selling healthy pyramid schemes, any of that stuff. I have a problem with any of that initiated by the medic in the back of an ambulance because what you're there to do is practice medicine. And if you believe in prayer and you want to pray for them, there's no reason you can't do that and still practice medicine. But when I see somebody grab a patient's hand, I want to pray for you. You don't know their life. You don't know their religion. You're there to practice medicine. And I've seen people try to sell all the healthy fads that come through where people are selling things, wraps or drinks or vitamins, or that's bad too. So that's for another show, but that's where my mindset went. But when you everybody needs help sometimes, and you start doing the job because it's who you want, and you think about for me, how did I want my grandmother taken care of? They took care of her, and I'm not. Let me treat this patient like I'd want my grandmother to be treated, like I'd want my wife or my children to be treated. When you start doing that, you get more compassion. But then the next step is these patients who had these medics, these EMTs who had the abdominal pain patient who just wanted to handpick a hospital, and they were nice to them. When you get to that Zen moment where you're okay with yourself, you're balanced here, and that comes with eating healthy. I got much better towards the end of my career because I was at a fire station and they looked after me. They made sure as best they could that I ate right. They made sure that I had somebody to talk to. When I was off, the lieutenant, it was not my lieutenant. I was with a private EMS service that we partnered with the county. I mean, we ran the 911 for the county, but we were not governed by the county. So we were partnered in with the firefighter. So he's not my lieutenant, not my captain, not my chief, because I had all three in that station. They looked after me like one of their own, like I was one of their firefighters. And they would come to me, pull me aside, like, hey, what you got going on, man? This is out of your behavior realm. This is not what we normally know of you. Would you like to talk about it? And that helped because I learned that I wasn't on my own. Because that's how you feel as a medic on a truck a lot of times is you're on your own. Not that National didn't have. National had those captains as well. I had Supervisor Huey. I had Huey Atkins call me to task because he first led with, because I was spouting off negative BS is what I was doing. I was running my mouth, being stressed and ugly. And it's just me and him in a truck one day standing by on some square somewhere, and I don't remember where, and just waiting for the other truck to come back so we could go back to our station or whatever. And he goes, let me tell you what I see in you. And he hit me with all the good stuff that I had no idea that anybody saw in me. He hit me with the good stuff. And then he said, and here's what you're doing wrong right now. You're taking this of who you are and you're trying to be somebody else, and you're not that. Go back to being you. Here's what we love. Here's why we work with you. Here's why. That's important. I'm speaking to all the leaders out there, the paramedics, the EMTs who are 10 years older than your medic and been at that job longer than they have. You're the leader. You're not maybe legally responsible for that truck, but you know what you're doing, and it's up to you to look after the people you're with. And if we all did that, if we all looked after the people we're with for their safety, to get their backs, to help them out, that's what Terry says. He goes, he's done the same with EMTs, but I also had their backs when I was a supervisor. That's the thing. We need to let them know we have your back. We need to let them know the good we see in them all the time. So when the bad comes out, one, we can say, no, it's fine. You had a bad day. Let it out. Bring it. But never let it change who you are. And two, when they're stressing and they're not, we can go to them with legitimacy and say, hey, I think you're a really great EMT. I think you're a really great medic. I think you're a really great lieutenant. And say, but this is you're acting different. You're not laughing anymore. You're angry. You're getting mad over the little things. And whether you want to talk to me about it or not, that's fine. Talk to somebody, but I can tell you, you're obviously carrying something that's not yours. And let me help you put it down so you can get back to the life that you want. And that's super important. That is so important in EMS and in this field. And it starts with you. It starts with you taking care of yourself, making sure you're putting down the burdens you need to put down to make sure you're de-stressing in a healthy way. Too many medics go alcoholic. Nothing wrong with alcohol. I love alcohol. You want to buy me some Dewar's Scotch? I will take it all day long. But I know how to do it in moderation. Eating. I'm a big guy. I'm back to trying to lose weight again because I gotten down to 310 pounds. From 370, I got down to 310. When I got back up to 350, I was like, I'm screwing this up, man. I liked who I was at 310. Let me get back to there. It's the positive that brings people around. But people overeat. We see it all the time, right? Stress eating. Sleep. The sleep deprivation struggle is real. It is real. You need to have a cycle set up somewhere else that you can sleep when you get off your shift, that you can go sleep, that you can take care of yourself. That's where money comes in. Man, now I'm going to get a whole nother topic. I got to stop now. But all this stuff is important. Your health is first. Your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health is first. Then if we would just take that effort as the newbie EMT, fresh out of Georgia Institute of EMS, got my first job. Wah! And you go in and you shut up. Because that's key. Shut up and listen and learn and show that you're involved in, oh, yeah. And if they ask you a question, by all means, be a part of the team, engage. But I got to tell you, when I'm a 10-year medic and a first-year medic comes in and, well, this is how we did it, smack. Shut up. No. Follow how we. I don't care. You're a 15-year medic, but you came from Minnesota to Georgia. It's a whole different world. Whole different world. Shut up and look how things are done here. But when you've done that, when you show you can learn, be that guy to talk to your partner and say, hey, I think it's important to get a good meal in. How about we jump a call for this crew? Let them know, hey, we're going to jump your call so you can eat something. How about we do that? And I know in the bigger situations, and by bigger, I mean more than 2 trucks in a bigger situation. 6 trucks. I know that there's been times I've said, hey, we're going to, whatever the codes were, there are codes, of course, where you don't go, hey, I'm going to be at McDonald's eating lunch. You're going to say, hey, I'm out on whatever, lunch duty or something. Find a way to implement that. Talk to your leadership, talk to your people, and say, hey, let us know that you're getting your meal, so then we will get your back. And all the calls that come out, we're going to make sure we stay in an area that covers both our territory and yours, and we're going to jump your call. And clear that course with the captains and the lieutenants and tell them what you're doing. And if people reject it, keep trying. Try to be helpful. Those kind of things. And that's all I have for today. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. I've got like a million things more. But I really love the engagement here. I've loved the questions. This is where we keep this conversation going, is by you putting the stuff in like Brent did and Terry did and Jeremy did and Laura and, of course, Barbara throwing things in here. This is how we keep that conversation going forward, because for all of you who are willing to ask the questions and put things out and engage, this. I mean, Terry, you're a supervisor. For the one person that's willing to say something about it, there's 10 to 15 that are just needing to hear this and are afraid to say anything. And maybe out of those 10 who need to hear it, only 3 of them realize they need to hear it. And they're still afraid to say anything. The other thing, they're okay until they hear that moment that hits home and they realize they're not okay. So that's how we keep this going. Please keep that up. Again, we're going to be shooting more for, like I said, from my understanding in Georgia, this falls under media, video, magazine. So watching these videos gets you an hour of continuing education every week. That is documented because you can go back and reference the links to the video. If you need to know how to get the links to the direct videos, email me or Tom. Both of us get this one email. EMSU is right there. It's right there on your screen. EMSU at gaiems.org. Or you can call the phone number there. That's 678-561-2368. That's the number to the school, so you can find out about classes. You can ask more about how to get the links, because there's a way on Facebook to get the links, and we do save these in our video profile on Georgia Institute of EMS. If this is shared somewhere else, follow it. Follow the links back to Georgia Institute of EMS. Follow this page so you can know when these shows go live and you can be a part of that conversation. And again, thanks to everybody for being a part of the conversation today, and let's keep it going forward.